Problème technique apparemment.
Il y a toujours des problèmes techniques.
So, welcome to this 12th Hindu-Christian Dialogue for Fellowship lecture. This evening, we have a very important person to speak to us. This is Mahieu and Professor K.C.R. Raza to moderate and chair the sessions. So before I hand over the time to Professor Raza, I would like to introduce him to you. Professor K.C.R. Raza was a mentor and management educator. He has been deeply interested for many years in innovative approaches to management education and building of institutions. He was the former director of S.P. Jain Institute of Management Studies and Research, Mumbai, and earlier of Somaya Institute of Management Studies. He was the founder, director of University of Mumbai's Galwar Institute of Career Education and Development. Professor Raza was instrumental in setting up the GIDC Rawfield Institute of Management Society for the Rotary Foundation Society. Currently, he is independent and non-executive director at Ashray Foundation. He had more than 20 years of experience in multinational with work in management, education, and administration. We are happy to have him this evening to moderate the sessions. So I now hand over the time to Professor Raza. Over to you, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Mindun, for your very generous words. I'm indeed privileged to be moderating this program, which has so far been one of the finest series of discussions on the meeting of religions, particularly the meeting of Christianity and Hinduism. And today we look forward to a presentation from Marthe Mahieu on one of the most amazing gurus, I would call him guru, an Acharya, who came to India from Belgium and who established Kurisumala, appropriately called Kurisumala, the Cross Mountain, an ashram which in itself became a symbol and an inspiration, a symbol of the meeting of religions, of two religions, brought in Christianity, the Hindu monastic life, and brought about an integration of both. To talk about this and to talk about him and his work, we have here Marthe Mahieu, who will be talking to us from Brussels. She was only 14 when her uncle, Francis Acharya, left by a boat for India. And she was ever since in touch with him. She spent her whole professional life in education of young people, as a teacher, then as the head master of a Catholic college for 20 years. And after retirement, she took a master's degree in religious sciences. And in 1988, she decided to come to India and spend some time with her uncle. And ever since, every year she has made it a point to come to India, spend some time at the ashram, and together they worked on a book which was published just a year before his passing away in 2001 on his life and his work. And therefore, we cannot really think of anyone better to talk about him and his life and his work than Marthe Mahieu. And we are privileged to have you with us. Thank you very much for coming and joining us. today. Today, at 80, she practices yoga, she practices gardening and praying with the harp of the spirit that the Acharya wrote to integrate Bhagavad Gita in the monastic daily prayer. Without further ado, may I request Marthe Mahieu to talk about her uncle, Francis Acharya. May I request you to start off?
Voilà. Voilà. Je dois y aller?
Yes, yes, please. Please start.
Okay. Good evening to all of you. I am very happy to take part in this seminar and to share with you the experience of my uncle, Father Francis Acharya. He was born a Belgian and became an Indian through naturalization. He has lived in very concrete terms the dialogue between Christians and Hindus, starting during his studies in Europe and more deeply in his ashram in Kurisumala, Kerala. I will briefly tell you his story, pointing out the interaction between Christian monastic life and Hinduism. John Mahieu was born in 1912 in Belgium into a Catholic family of 7 children. After classical language studies, his family sent him to study engineering in London, Great Britain. And it was there in London in 1931 that he attended the arrival of Gandhi at the British Parliament. It was a shock for him, a shock to see this little man in dhoti, barefoot, standing up to the king of the British Empire. This was the starting point of his interest in India. He later wrote, "For me, it was the victory of a man who embodied poverty. It was the epiphany of a purely spiritual power, and I began to dream of following the same path." At the age of 23, when he had a comfortable future as a businessman, he announced that he wanted to become a Cistercian monk. He chose the Abbey of Scourmont because it was considering creating a foundation in India. He entered as a novice in 1935. He was enthusiastic about monastic studies, especially Saint Bernard, and also the Fathers of the East, Evagrius the Pontic of John Climacus. But later he was less interested in the more dogmatic studies that he was sent to follow in Rome in 1939. While he was studying there, he learned that Father Montchanin, a French priest who had founded a small Christian hermitage in Shantivanam, Tamil Nadu, had come to Scourmont to ask the abbé if he could not send him 1 or 2 monks as support. Montchanin was promised to give it some thought. But in 1940, the Second World War shattered all plans. The abbey was occupied by the Germans, the monks were expelled and struggled to survive. After the war, the community was impoverished. Francis was sent to England to manage the novices in the small monastery in Calde in Wales. In 1948, the independence of India led to the definitive withdrawal of the project of foundation in this country, as it had become almost impossible to obtain visas. The young Indian government was suspicious of Christian missionaries associated with Western colonization. In addition, the Schoolmont Abbey no longer had the financial means. But Francis did not give up. He finally obtained to live on his own as a hermit, without any financial support, to join Father Montchanin. And also, he was allowed to go to Paris 2 days a week to take courses in Sanskrit and Hindu philosophy at the Institute of Indian Civilization. There he got all the books he could find on the Vedas, the Upanishad, Hindu and Buddhist monasticism. He corresponded with Father Le Sceau, a French Benedictine monk who, in the meantime, had joined Montchanin in Chantivanam. But the problem was the visa. After long waitings and several refusals, he finally obtained his visa thanks to a lucky meeting, he will say providential, with Mrs. Vijaya Pandit, who was at this time, who was the sister of the Prime Minister Pandit Nehru, and was at this time the Indian ambassador in London. She was very fond of Gandhi. During their brief conversation at the India House, she told my uncle, "Send me your project. I'll see what I can do." Francis then wrote a 17-page file, which he entitled "The Meeting of Hinduism and Christianity Through Monastic Life." He sent his file to Mrs. Pandit with a basket of dried flowers and lavender water produced of the Abbey of Calde. 2 weeks later, he was summoned to the embassy and received his visa. Arriving in Bombay, now it's Mumbai, in July 1955, Francis was welcomed by Father Le Sceau, alias Abhishektananda, who immediately took him to spend a night of meditation in the Elephanta cave, facing the monumental three-headed Shiva sculpted in the rock. He began by traveling for 2 months in the north of India by train and bus, staying in monasteries, spending a week with Hindu sannyasis, learning yoga. When he arrived in Chantivanam, he settled in a small hut and shared the life and prayers of his 2 companions for 1 year. But the eremitical life was not his goal. It was not his choice. He wanted to found a community on the Cistercian model. It is thanks to the providential meeting, it's always providence for him. The meeting of Mar Athanasios, Syro-Malankara Bishop of Tiruvalla, that he discovered the Syriac liturgy. A new love at first sight during the 1955 Christmas night. Then, later, he was invited by the bishop to found a monastery on a mountain offered to him by a Christian tea planter. On this deserted summit, in a grandiose landscape, at the cost of great efforts, with the help of 3 companions, later soon about 20 novices, he built and developed a completely original Christian ashram. Kurisumala is indeed fed by 3 sources, 3 breaths, 3 spiritualities, which interpenetrate one another to nurture a unique monastic life. The original Christian Cistercian model is the first one. Second is the Eastern Syriac liturgy. And the third is the Indian way of life in the manner of Gandhi, inspired by the Hindu tradition. How are these 3 closely related currents woven together at Kurisumala? I will try to give you 7 remarkable examples. The first one is the practical aspects of daily life in Kurisumala. The kavi clothes of the monks are those of the Hindu sannyasis. They are made on the spot. The furniture, or rather the lack of furniture, because you sit on the floor. The dishes, the vegetarian food, follow the standards of Gandhi's ashram and of the poor village in India. The second one is the breeding of cows. The Cistercians must work to live. Ora et labora is their motto. They aren't supposed to beg for their living. They generally work the land, raising cattle. Acharya follow this path, making fertile and barren land. But by raising a large herd of cows and setting up a dairy, he became associated with the Goseva, the cow service dear to the Hindus. The third one is the daily, weekday mass, the Bharatiya Puja. The Bharatiya Puja is said in the Indian rite with flowers and oil lamps sitting on the floor, while the solemn Kurbana on Sunday is in Syriac rite. Fourth one is the partner with Swamiji. Who was Swamiji? His real name is Dharmananda. He was a wandering sannyasi, a Hindu monk preacher, great scholar of the Vedanta. He came to visit Kurisumala, asked to stay there for a while, and was welcomed in the community in 1969. Finally, he remained there for 7 years, appreciated by both the monks as well as the guests, working as hostel father and giving classes on the Rig Veda. He took part in all the daily prayer periods of the divine office without feeling the desire to change his religion. For Acharya, this companionship with a Hindu monk integrated into the community was a very strong human experience, a warm materialization of the familiarity he had established through the texts. Fifth example is Sivananda Ashram. In 1968, Acharya took a sabbatical and spent 2 months in the Hindu ashram of Master Sivananda in the foothills of the Himalayas. He perfected his yoga, participated in the prayers, and studied the sacred Indian scripture in the beautiful library. He discovered there the practice of satsang. It's an evening meeting during which everybody sings, listens to Indian music, and shares spiritual or social experiences. The abbot often gives a short talk. As soon as my uncle returned to Kurisumala, he established this practice, which from then on was part of the daily schedule. Sixth one. Over the years, Acharya wrote a masterly work, The Harp of the Spirit. The title refers to Saint Ephraim. He's a 4th century Syriac deacon and poet. It is a collection of prayers in 4 volumes, which gathers biblical texts and hymns for all the monastic office of the liturgical year. It is the support of the daily common prayer in Kurisumala. Acharya has translated in English the 4,000 pages of the Penkito. The Penkito is the Syriac monastic breviary. He adapted it and included passages from the Veda and the Upanishad, which he called Seeds of the Word. This was just after Vatican II, which proclaimed that the Word of God was present in all ancient religions as seeds of the Word. But the way Acharya included Hindu prayers in a Christian liturgical book was a very bold innovation. Rome, however, approved the publication, which was welcomed by the ancient churches. The 7th sample is different. As the end of his life, Acharya embraced the Hindu tradition in a very intimate way, confiding in an Ayurvedic physician who successfully treated him for the last 2 years of his life. At the age of 88, weakened by 2 heart attacks, he constantly suffered from very painful chest pains. The cardiologist of Marigiri Hospital refused to have him go through surgery. Given the fragility of his heart and arteries, they said it was too risky. They told him that there were nothing more they could do, that he had to stay at complete rest, lying on his bed in his room. Acharya was very unhappy. He didn't agree, because he was eager to teach the novices and to take part in the prayers in the church with the community. One of the monks, Mariananda, who was the nursing monk, suggested to consult a Hindu naturopath. And this Hindu doctor, relieved him of his pain with a treatment with compresses and a strict diet. He lived for 2 more years, remaining active while his pain had almost gone. My conclusion is Father Francis Acharya believed that monastic life is a privileged place for interreligious dialogue. If the Christian Cistercian spirit and the Syriac liturgy are the pillars of Kurisumala, the Hindu tradition and spirituality fill its daily life and prayer. More than a dialogue, the friendship between Christian and Hindus was for Acharya a mutual hospitality throughout his whole life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We had heard about Kurisumala. We have also heard about other experiments in Hindu, Christian faith integration. But this is what you have described today is something very, very unique and very inspiring. It is really the two faiths not merely just coming together, but living, understanding, appreciating, and accepting each other in practical life, in the way that they work, in the way that they live, in the way that they pray. And that's something, the 7 points that you've mentioned bring them out very, very beautifully. And thank you very much for that. Before I invite questions or comments from other members, and I would also request Father Matthew to come in sometime later because he has been so close both to you and has known Acharya and has known Kurisumala and the life in Kurisumala and the community that is developed there. So I would certainly like him also to join the discussion and give us the benefit of his knowledge about the Acharya. But before that, I was just wondering whether we could have, some idea about the people who lived there permanently and who had been brought up by Francis Acharya to live a monastic life, which was deeply rooted in both Christianity and in Vedic and Upanishadic
C'est
tradition.
une autre personne. C'est une
Yeah.
autre personne, ça.
Yeah.
Marthe. Marthe is my godmother. I could say that, she was taking care of me while I was in Belgium. And I used to go and visit her. She used to come and visit me in Holy Spirit College where I studied. I was there almost 6 years. And then Marthe also visited my mother while she was visiting her uncle Francis Acharya in Wagaman. And it seems my mother entrusted to her to take care of me. So that day onwards, she was so closely, and also the whole family. So I'm grateful to Marthe for this wonderful exposition. And as you are closely associated with your uncle Francis and or his deep urge or desire to come to India, and then as you have very well presented that, that was a shock for him, Mahatma Gandhi coming out of a ship with a goat and a loincloth. So that was really turned him the whole life experience. So he said that he wanted to come to India. And the simplicity, that is also what touched Francis Acharya, because he was later, so he was in the army as a captain. And then the family had actually in Yip, there is a textile industry, and his uncle entrusted Francis to run that industry. For the sake of running it, he went to study in London engineering and then MBA, what we say. That is the time he came back, and then he was taking care of this industry. And then he exploded to the family that he wanted to become a Cistercian monk. The family could not accept it, but the family then asked him to continue for a few more years until his brother became uh, studied well, and then he has come back and then taken care. And Francis came to the Cistercian monastery. First, he was the novice there. Then he became ordained as a priest, and then he became the novice master. But he had always an ardent desire to become to come to India. So first he thought that maybe it is better that if he goes to goes to United Kingdom, there will be a possibility. So that is the reason why he went to
Des
Ireland
questions
and to
apparaissent.
UK, and then from there met
Et je
uh,
commence tout, quoi.
Vijayalakshmi Pandit, and then came to India. So there also, once they came to India, there is a person known as Pottangulam. The family, they have shown almost, I think, 150 or 200 hectares of land that was freely donated, and they started in a hut. It is in 1958. So there was a group of young aspirants from India, and then Francis Acharya was there. Along with him, there was again another British, Bede Griffiths was also there. So they lived, but Bede Griffiths later separated and went away from there. But as Marthe very well said, the community has the three roots. That is the Cistercian Christian way of life, then the Eastern Syriac liturgy, then also Indian Hindu tradition. So they are vegetarians, they sit on the floor, and then their prayers are integrated with from Bhagavad Gita and also Upanishads. So that way, I think it was a very, very unique experience, which you will not. And then you could also, as Marthe very well said, Brahmananda, a Swamiji of the Ramakrishna mission, he came, he stayed for 6 or more years, and then he was part of the community for all the prayers, for the meals and all kinds of community activities. So I could never say. So maybe the Focolare, many of the Focolare members are there. So in your community, some of you are Catholic, some others might be either belonging to the Lutheran or Anglican or various other traditions. So that way you could see that even in the 50s, Francis Acharya has evolved such a brilliant community. And then he had lots of opportunities to go abroad. He was invited by many to give lectures, but he never went. Very, very seldom he went away, because he was important to bring a community. So his presence gave the life of the community, and he was always there. And I still remember the way he was praying, the prayer, in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. That is the English prayer, but in Malayalam, Pidavinam Putranam Parishuddhatmavinam. So I still rhyme the way Francis Acharya was saying. And then these are all the spiritual dimension. But I must also say that, which Marthe did not speak about, that, the integral development of the people there. So he was instrumental in developing in Kerala and other places, the white revolution. So he introduced the cows and created the fodder, and he was instrumental in bringing the Swiss ambassador to Kerala, and then established the Indo-Swiss project, so that the semen and all collected, preserved, and then also distributed all over Kerala. So that way, not only the spiritual but also for the economical development of the place. So not only the spiritual aspirations, but the economic revolution was also instrumental by Francis Acharya. So as a young boy, I was going to the church, and I have seen that a truck with full of milk coming from Kurisumala, and in the front I have seen always this monk wearing the saffron clothes. So that was the inspiration for me. Who is he? what is he and all. Later, so my house is almost 30 kilometers away from the Kurisumala ashram, but later I have a very close association with the community. Go there, stay there, and I am even in this February I stayed there for a night and had the morning the mass, and their mass is also so one. Sundays they have the Eastern liturgy, and the other days they have the Bharatiya Puja. Bharatiya Puja means, it is a way of integrating from the Indian traditions. Maybe the prayers are like Om Ye Yeshu Ishaya Namaha. So the singing and the prayers are so such a beautiful way blended with the Indian thoughts, Indian philosophy. So the whole life revolve around, though it is Western monasticism, but it is totally integrated with the Indian spiritual traditions. The wealth of the Indian spiritual traditions are integrated. So if ever you have a chance to go to Agaman, so you will experience almost 20 monks are living there. They are they have first as the novice, and then almost 2 years of this novitiate, and then they will become a monk. Not every monk will become a priest. So only selected people according to the community. So recently there was an engineer who was almost more than 20 years, Augustine, who was a monk. So he did not want to become, but I think the community told him that he should become. So Augustine was ordained as a Catholic priest last February. 1 week later, I could go and join with him to celebrate the mass. So as Professor Raja was asking about, the community. So around 20 members are there. There are also aspiring intellectuals coming over there, and they beautifully blend, as Marthe said, that ora et labora, prayer and work. So these two together blending, and early morning at 3:30 they get up. 4 o'clock they have the prayer till 6:30, and then 6:30 they have the mass, and 7:30 they have the breakfast, and then they go for the work. Then they have a little siesta, then again prayer, then again work, then again prayer, and by around 9 o'clock they will go to bed. So this is a kind of, and then milk production is their main income. They also have vegetables. So these are some of the extra other activities, if I can join with in explaining what Marthe was trying to explain, since Professor Raja and the others were asking. So I think there are many questions there. Maybe Marthe, you could explain, and if further explanations or anything needed, I can.
Yeah. Would you be able to see the questions, or should I read them out?
Marthe, please unmute yourself. Marthe, yeah.
So yes, I can read the questions, but I'm not fluent English. My text.
It's okay. Whatever you say, then I can
Yes.
further explain.
Yes.
I try to answer the questions.
Yes.
How was for the own faith and belief strengthened by his experience of living the Hindu way of life? I think it's not exactly is the heart of his belief, but is the way we can live, and especially the simplicity, la sobriété, comment est-ce qu'on dit ça? Acharya has the experience of Western religious life, and after the war, he began to experience that the church in Western countries began to be too rich. You understand? Too rich, too comfortable. And he discovered in the Indian way of life the poverty and the choice of a very simple life, and a totally confident in the spirit, and not less materialist than in the Western countries. Is that a good answer?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Yes.
And the second question is, can you tell what touched your heart by Kurisumala, by Francis Acharya Monastic Life?
Marthe?
Oui? Yes?
Yes.
Okay?
What touched your heart?
Oui. But that is very difficult to tell, but I can just tell you when my first arrival in Kurisumala was on the Christmas night in 89. I come just, it was about 11 p.m. and directly I was in the church for the great Christmas Mass. And it was for me a sort of miracle, of illumination. I never see that in my life. And after the Mass, everybody come by Acharya to receive the blessing. And I was the last one. And then he make a special blessing for me. He put his two hands on my head. And I feel me loved and pardonné, forgiven for all my life. And it was a very deep spiritual experience. Then I was crying, but it was good.
Tears.
Good tears of joy. And so I get out and I see these wonderful mountains. And I had the feeling that I was very, very close to the
Heaven.
The heaven. It was a place when the prayer go up to the heavens directly. And it was a very emotional experience for me. And I think I will go back. I must go back there every year.
Have you been coming?
Yes, yes, every year. Then for 20 years.
Oh, I see. Yeah. When was the last visit?
My last visit is thanks to Mahieu Chandran in 2008 for a symposium in Kottayam. Yeah.
Right.
For the publication of the book in India.
Oh, okay. There are a couple of more questions. Would you be able to read them?
The next question
yes.
is after the second several changes in India for its communication side. Church may have new activity. What is it? He approach and overcome these difficulties. I think the best is to read the book to have the answer when it is a very complex question. But I can say that
the book explains the challenges.
Yes, the challenges about independence I can't see, but Vatican II was a deep chance for him.
Opportunity.
A deep opportunity when the church before was very reluctant to dialogue with other religions. And Acharya was not very appreciated by some bishop. He was in Tiruvala in a Latin church, and the bishop said, he go and leave you kavi clothes. It is a shame to see you so. Go and take a correct cloth. So it was difficult for him, but in Kerala, in the Syriac church, it was good tolerated. But after Vatican II, it was a big stream for the dialogue and to recognize the spirit in other religions, the Holy Spirit. And so for Acharya, it was a very good opportunity, and I think Rome did not approve the harp of the Spirit before Vatican II, before the Nostra Aetate, the encyclic Nostra Aetate was very important for him.
C'est une bonne réponse.
We have
C'est tout à fait la réponse à la question.
one more question.
Just like Kurisumala, which is also the encounter of three sources, I think is unique. It is not multiplied in other places, but there is similar experience.
There is some connection problem.
Yeah, I think there is a bit, but it will be coming.
Yeah.
Just a few seconds, I am sure.
Yeah. So bandwidth.
Marthe, did you get the connections or gone? Hello?
Probably trying to come back.
Marthe? Maybe I can explain a few things meanwhile while
Yes.
she is coming.
Yes.
This question, I think the difficulties before the Second Vatican Council. Francis Acharya started in 1958, and then we could see that that was almost the beginning of the Second Vatican Council, and then there are bishops and even Zaleski. It seems that many of these nuncio and the others and the bishops considered that wearing saffron clothes are not befitting for a Catholic priest. So that was the reason why the Francis Acharya was there in Mysore for a Catholic bishops and the priests conference, and he was despised by the some of the bishops as well as the nuncio that he should take away that saffron cloth and they should not wear. But I think he did not care about that. But also we need to understand that his ardent desire to come to India, therefore he has to break with the Cistercian monastery. So it seems that when he got the visa and then he came back to his monastery in Skurmo in Belgium, he was not allowed to enter his room because he has broken with and he wanted to go to India. So therefore he came to India not as part of the Skurma monastery, and then he came established, but later they accepted him. And then there is a monastery in Australia, Tarawara, which was affiliated, Kurisumala Ashram is affiliated to the Benedictine monastery, and the Benedictine abbot every once in 3 years will come and conduct a kind of a visitation, and integrated very well with the Benedictine Kamaladolis. So that is the specific name, Kamaladolis. So it became part of the Benedictine Kamaladolis Benedictine monastery, and very closely associated with the universal Benedictine monasteries. Always the abbots go and participate in the meetings in Rome and other places. So that way they have very close connections now. But Francis Acharya had to go through a big difficult time in order to participate in this process of this integration. So I would say that that would be a heart-breaking moments, but it became a joy both for the Benedictines as well as for Francis Acharya.
Right. Has Marthe been able to come back? No.
No, I think might have broken
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
So there is another question: is this experience of Kurisumala also multiplied in other places, and what is the relationship between the monks?
Yes.
Marthe, I think she might be able to come. Marthe, are you here?
Please unmute herself.
Marthe? Okay. So
Yeah, I think she's coming.
yes. Marthe?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I'm,
Yeah.
Okay, great.
yes, it was blocked, but Thomas is repairing that.
Okay, okay. You can speak. Whatever. Yes.
Yeah.
So you have to unmute, I think, or
She has
Repeat the
unmuted.
questions because the questions do not display anymore.
okay.
Should
But
utter the question.
she can. Marthe can speak. So
Voilà. I can see not any other question.
okay. Marthe, there
Only
was
one question. Yeah.
there is a question that is about the Kurisumala also multiplied in other places. I think I can answer that question. So there were many monks who were living there, so they wanted to have a different experience. So they have moved away from Kurisumala ashram, established other ashrams, one in Idukki, one in Batteri, as far as I know. So, but these two were independent ashrams, not part of Kurisumala ashram. Kurisumala ashram is only a unique one, and it did not have any other separate monasteries. So always around 20 members. So even now there are 17 members there, but those who are moved away, so they developed as independent monasteries. So that is to the question whether.
Right. I think
If anybody
those
wanted
are-
to ask other questions.
Any more questions? Would anyone like to come in with?
Hello. Hello, Father Mahieu. This is Ananta here.
Okay,
Please come
Ananta.
in.
Yes.
Hello.
Ananta is from the Chennai Center for Developmental Studies. He's an economist. So yes, Ananda, most welcome.
Please come in.
So thank you so much, Marthe and Father Mahieu and Professor Raja. So it is a joy
Welcome.
to be with you.
Welcome.
So
Please come in.
based upon this experience, now in what way Kurisumala now, what are some new initiatives in Kurisumala? For example, now in terms of Hindu-Christian coexistence, this is a very important part. But building on this, can we think of Hindu, Christian, and Muslim coexistence, for example? So my humble query is, what are possibilities of building on the inspiring work of Swami Abhisiktananda and Father Acharya and Bede Griffiths? In what way it can be taken further now today in our contemporary world?
Yeah.
Especially with Islam, since there is a Islamophobia in both Europe and India, what would be some insights from Kurisumala? And also Kerala has a long tradition of coexistence of these three religions.
I can summarize.
Yes, yeah. Martha, would you like to give an answer to this?
Ouais, demande juste 10 secondes de délai.
Oui. Thomas will translate to me. 10 seconds delay.
En résumé, il y a eu un dialogue entre les chrétiens et les hindous. Dans quelle mesure peut-on, par analogie avec ce qui a fonctionné là, se servir de ça pour réussir aujourd'hui un dialogue avec les musulmans dans une période où ça ne fonctionne plus? C'est à propos des musulmans et de comment sortir de l'islamophobie.
Okay. I can only answer with my experience in Belgium. When I have not any experience of the relation with Muslim in India. But in Belgium, we have in Brussels, where there are numerous Muslims in Brussels, we have 3 different institutions for dialogue with Muslim and Christians. And this functions in the schools, in the social work, also in the civil, some musical meetings, and but it is not not in a monastery. It is in a. It was not. It was lay people and some priesters also were working on this on this encounter and dialogue, and so I try in my school. I have 20% Muslim children, and when it was Ramadan, I put some Quranic sentences in the hall of the school in dialogue with the students. And also I put some sentence of Quran in parallel with the sentence of the gospel to show we are close of those students. They will respect them. That is my experience, but I don't know what is similar in India.
So I can say that see close to Kurisumala there is a town which Iratupeta where there are lots of Muslims, and many of them they come to Kurisumala ashram, they interact. So therefore, not only with the Hindus but also we have with the Muslims. So that interactions are already there. And then yes, Bede Griffiths also, I think it was a very general question as Professor Ananta was asking. they also have this close association with Hindus, but there I don't know how far, but I saw that, it is open to everyone. Kurisumala ashram as well as Bidgrivit's ashram in Shantivanam. So all of them, they welcome these people, whoever. They don't care whether they are Muslims or Hindus or Christians, but everyone is welcome. I think we could say that, it is the humanity, irrespective of the religion. So they care for the people, and anyone who is coming there, then, they are fed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think there are any further questions. If anyone would like to come in, ask any question. If not, let me thank Marthe for this beautiful session that we have had. Very inspiring session. What she has described about Kurisumala is probably one of the greatest hopes that we have for this country. And as Father Mahieu also mentioned, in the last few years, adversity in the form of natural disasters, in the form of floods, in the form of the pandemic and earlier epidemics in Kerala have brought the different communities together. It's also helped in bringing Hindus, Muslims, and Christians together. And what Kurisumala has done has of course been going several steps further in bringing them, as you said, Marthe, bringing them into a spiritual life and practical pursuit together. And a new model of monastic life has been created, a unique model, which one hopes will be replicated in other places also. That is the greatest hope that we can have for the country, an integral development of our people. I don't know whether one can call Francis Acharya a guru steeped in Christian traditions, Christian spiritual traditions, or a Christian priest steeped in the wisdom of the Vedas. Both may be true. In fact, he's both. He's brought both together, and that is a great inspiration and a great example. And I would like, therefore, to end on the note of hope that this inspiring example of his, the work that that he has done for years in Kurisumala, will remain an inspiration and will inspire a much wider circle of Hindus, Muslims, and Christians to work for a similar harmony of faiths in the years to come. The generations to come will not only remember, but work in the same manner. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marthe. And with that, may I hand this back to Father?
Yes. Thank you, my godmother Marthe, for this wonderful exposition of your uncle, Francis Acharya, who has that desire to come to India and integrated this Western monasticism with Indian monasticism, with the Eastern Syriac liturgy. So it is a kind of beautiful blending of different traditions. And I think you exposed your uncle Francis Acharya, his spiritual wisdom through this lecture, and we are grateful to you. And also your son assistant, Professor Thomas, who was also there. Can we see him? Yeah, yes. Wonderful that the mother-son collaboration. So it was something very fascinating, and then we really enjoyed. Hopefully, maybe after Corona or when I am passing by, I hope I can come and see you, or you can also come again once again to see India. Um, maybe after this Corona, Marthe and maybe Thomas. And I am grateful to Professor Raja in such a wonderful way. You have drawn the inspiration and you comprehended the message, and then also asked very relevant questions. So to Professor Raja, we also thank you so much. And for everyone, I think it was a very, very wonderful question answer session, and then the inspiration of Francis Acharya really will be enlightening us in these times of difficult pandemic, as well as, you know, these phobias of different religious traditions, Islamophobia or Christian phobia or Hindu phobia, or, you know, we have all these kinds of. So as Professor said, you know, we have more of harmony. So those who are participating in that lecture series as a project certificate course, the question will be how Francis Acharya integrated the Western monastic tradition with the Indian Hindu tradition to integrate the spirituality for the harmony of humanity. So we will give you the question again, so that in the WhatsApp it will be sent.
Thank you.
And
Mahieu, we will have to read the book to answer this question.
oh, sorry. Whatever you have listened.
Yeah. If you've
Whatever
taken down notes, I think
so you don't need to read, but whatever you have heard, you know, you definitely from basing on that.
yes.
And today also there was a mentioning about Abhishektananda, and Abhishektananda was another Henry Lesso, another Benedictine monastic who came to India, and then he was influenced by Ramana Maharshi. And Ramana Maharshi from Bangalore is not that far away, Tiruvannamalai. So our next lecture will be on
Oh.
Ramana Maharshi by Professor Ramnath Narayana Swami, professor from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. So Ramana Maharshi, so that will be the next Thursday's lecture. So thank you, Marthe, Thomas, and Professor Raja,
Wonderful.
and for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great.
On peut quitter maintenant. Oui.